I hear some sounds that briefly see. I think we can start. All right, perfect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you again for joining today. Welcome back if you also joined last time. And welcome for people who are joining for the first time. We want to do this in a regular fashion, like roughly once a month. The last one was 6 weeks ago, so it's not been exactly that. And I assume the next one will be either early or later in January. Either way, Fontra, the browser-based font editor. On the one hand, it can be, I will again briefly talk about what Fontra is. It can be an online font editor, but that aspect of Fontra is not all that available yet for a larger audience. So for now, we're working with a local version of Fontra called Fontra Pak, which is downloadable from the fontra.xyz website. There's a download link for macOS, a download link for Windows. It says when it was last updated, so this is uploaded during the night. So we have an automated build system. So I'm downloading it now just to show what we will get. Let me see. Is it done? So, okay, so you'll get a mounted DMG, and we'll just drop it onto the applications folder. And let me see, then I have an alias prepared. That's the same thing. We can start it up. So this is freshly downloaded, so you get a notice just as a brief reminder. And for the newcomers, so we get a funny little application that only has a tiny window here where you can drop files. You can also drop files on the app icon. Yeah, I'm going to start with going through some news items. What is new since last month? Hello, I just opened a DesignSpace based project. Since last month, I will briefly go through the items in list form, and after that I will demo them individually. So a new feature is that we can delete glyphs, and we can copy whole glyphs onto new glyphs. We can create glyphs more easily and paste other glyphs on top of them. We have a brand new feature with discrete axes and DesignSpace 5 support. So you can have an italic axis where the various sources do not interpolate. So it's kind of a hard axis. There's some improved interpolation error reporting, and some experimental news is we've started to develop a Fontra native file format. First, back to the deletion of glyphs. So we have in Fontra, we're always looking at a full design space. We can navigate in the design space tab we see the sliders, and if you select a glyph, you can see which sources are available for that glyph. So that depends. In this particular font we're looking at, this is K5 from Black Foundry, which has a discrete axis. So we have, but it also has a continuous axis along the weight for weight. So we can see here like which sources are available for this glyph. This is not necessarily the same for each glyph. Anyway, I wanted to show glyph deletion, so I'm already going ahead of myself. To delete the glyph, you can select it, and we can hit the delete key, and you get a little warning, and it will delete the glyph. And now we have this empty placeholder glyph. I will briefly go back to the Finder, this project. So I opened this DesignSpace file. The UFOs that belong to the project are here. There are 6 sources in total. This action that I just did deleted the e-glyph from all the sources at once. So it's gone, poof. However, I can still undo. So it's not completely gone right away. So that is glyph deletion. Let's make a copy of a glyph. So for instance, if I want to create an alternate E, I have a glyph name in mind, say e.alt, and I'm using the spelling that with the slash glyph name, it either needs to end in another slash or in a space. So now we have an empty placeholder glyph. Since it is not an encoded thing, we don't get a preview, but we see the glyph name that we entered here. If I double click it, it would be created. But let's not do that. I can actually go to the e-glyph. I mean, if I double click it, I go into edit mode. But to copy a whole glyph, I don't want to be in edit mode. I just want it to be selected. And I will copy the glyph, and I will select the glyph that does not yet exist. So I just made that name. This shows that it doesn't actually exist yet, but we can paste it. Paste, and there is an entire copy of the glyph, including all the sources and layers. So now I can mess it up, and of course we still have this interpolatable system. I have a duplicate of the glyph that I can modify, and it's been copied through all the sources in all the UFOs. So if we would go to one of those, even the italic also was copied along. So that is copying a glyph across the entire design space. I already mentioned DesignSpace 5 support. We see that here in that the italic axis has only 2 valid values. That's described in the DesignSpace file. The italic axis only has a possible value of 0 and 1. So we can, it kind of works like a switch. The DesignSpace 5 formats support any number of discrete values. This particular one, we just have 2, which in my estimation will be the most common use case for this this DesignSpace feature. I'm probably already messing up my time planning. No, it's okay. I could do worse. So what I'd like to show here, so this particular font has support for various languages, but the very special thing about this font Kefa is that it has Ethiopic support. So I will just show an Ethiopic glyph here. However, and that's the main reason I want to show this, if we go back to the sources panel, the DesignSpace panel, it only exists in upright and not in italic. This is a feature because italic for Ethiopic doesn't make sense, apparently. But however, if we go to the italic, so with FontMake you can build, so this would result in 2 variable fonts, one upright and one italic, and the italic would not contain the Ethiopic. However, in Fontra, we were looking at a full design space, so what to do. And what we see here is that it shows a glyph in gray that indicates some sort of error. And in this case, it says, well, it's actually just a warning, there are no sources for italic equals 1, as we can see indeed. So it doesn't need to be a full system. Not every glyph has to participate in all cases. Talking about interpolation errors, let me introduce an interpolation error. For instance, let me insert a point here in this contour or here, which will make it not interpolatable. So I get a little bug icon here that says the paths are not compatible. Okay, that's the exact information. Could be improved, and that is something that we will work on. But now let's go back. Now, if we want to show the other, you see that I've broken the interpolatability for this glyph, and again, this also will show at interpolated positions, like at the sources themselves, everything is fine. But once you interpolate, the system doesn't work. So it will be shown in gray. If we select it, we also see that same message. So it's like if you have a longer block of text, you will see if glyphs are displayed in gray, you know that there's a problem with them, and you can go to them and figure out what's going on. And let's see what I can do. Okay, I try to edit a glyph while not being exactly at a source location. If I do that, I get a dialog. We'll go to the nearest source, and this point is the one that I don't want. I will just delete it, And we're back to the interpolatable system. All right, interpolation error. I want to briefly show the work in progress. Well, everything is work in progress about Fontra, but this file format that I'm working on, so the file extension is .fontra. It is a folder of things, not unlike a UFO, not unlike a Glyphs package project. It could be hidden in a package. Right now, it's still literally a folder, so I'm not hiding it yet. So like how a UFO is secretly a folder, for now, the Fontra thing is actually a folder. It might also turn into a package like that. But there's some meta information. It's still very rudimentary. The core feature is the Glyphs folder, which for each glyph it contains a single file. This is actually not a great, well, okay, you see. So every glyph is stored as a bit of JSON data. Let me just open a single one in a text editor real quick to show you what that looks like. Somehow I'm not clicking in the right way. Come on here, and my text editor is here. So, but like all the sources, all the layers are in this single file. Every data belonging to the glyph is in this single file. It's all pure JSON. For now, I'm disabled indentation, so it kind of looks a little bad. I think if I manually save it, I get my auto formatter kicking in. Uh-oh, that doesn't look good if it's taking so long. But it's pure JSON data. And now Sublime is giving up. Okay, well, that's pretty much all I needed to show anyway. Maybe I should force quit just in case it does anything bad in the meantime. All right, so this was not a bug in Fontra, this was a bug in Sublime, my text editor, yay. So yeah, this is something we're working on. I will show later on in the demo. We have some command line tool to convert from one format to the other. There's a command line tool that can convert a DesignSpace based project to a Fontra based one, or also actually from a Glyphs file is also possible. Right. The next thing I want to demo is that, so at the moment we cannot start a project from scratch yet. That is high on our wish list, and I was hoping that it would be done by now. But this is it takes some more work because we don't have really a font info editor. But here I have like a very skeleton-like project. It has a, I'm actually going to show this one briefly in a text editor. Come on, why is it not? Okay, and so this is a very minimal DesignSpace file. It has two axes, a weight axis, minimum, maximum, default. And it has a width axis, and it has a single source at the default location. So there's no other source. While it has axes, it's otherwise unpopulated completely. And it also, the UFO is completely empty. It doesn't contain any glyphs yet. So let's change that. Let's drop this onto receive a placeholder glyphs with the default string. Let's just double click on the H, and let's very quickly draw a very bad H. So this also, as a reminder, this immediately writes to the UFO. There's no save button in Fontra. So if I would go very briefly, if I open the package contents and go to the Glyphs folder, indeed, there will be my H glyph that is created just now. However, we have a weight axis after all. Let's go there. Obviously, we haven't drawn a bold source, bold master. So let's change that. So currently we only have a default source. Either I navigate to where I want to go, or I can do it. That's usually what I do. So here we have a plus button, which will add a source. Well, actually, we get a dialog. Let's actually call this black. Let's call it black. It is at weight 900. So now I've added another source, and we have actually received a copy there of the default glyph, which I can modify right away. And let's just make it a little bolder. And so I'm changing the outline so it stays compatible. Of course, I can break the compatibility anytime I want, but if you just add a source, it will include, it will insert the compatible shape. In fact, so let's go back to Finder. All of a sudden, wait, this is not where I want it to be. I want here. All of a sudden, we have a new font _ black UFO. So Fontra created this for us. And if I go to the DesignSpace file, we suddenly see that it has an additional source at this position. It takes some liberty in deciding whether to create a new UFO or just a new sparse layer inside the UFO. For instance, if I would like an intermediate, let me go, let's call it medium, and let's put it at a nice round value, maybe 550. Then, as you see, I've inserted a medium source, and the whole system works still the same way. It actually inserted an interpolation here that I can now modify. Let's just mess it up so we can see there's something different. But if I now go to Finder, we'll see there's no medium UFO. It actually created a layer here. Let me show the package contents. So it created a layer medium because it was not at a default or an end or a beginning position. This is kind of a heuristic that Fontra currently uses. Perhaps in the future we can get more control over that from Fontra itself. In the meantime, if you start with a Fontra project that already, or a DesignSpace project that already exists, it will not change this. So it will read the way the DesignSpace file is constructed and will not change that. So if you have built we see here, if we go to, this is our medium style, and it actually lives in the regular UFO, and it's in the layer called medium. If we would open this file in RoboFont, we would see that as a layer. But anyway, if this were an actual medium UFO in the DesignSpace file, if it were set up like that with some other tools, then Fontra would gladly read that and also not change that when writing. So it's just when creating new sources, it will try to find what is the most likely thing to do. So this was all right, I'm actually doing good on time so far. Let me double check my side channel. Yes, thanks. The next thing I want to show more about is variable components. So I will briefly talk about the concept. If you're an experienced Glyphs user, you know the concept of smart components. That is roughly equivalent with some minor details. It's also mostly compatible. We can actually convert a Glyphs file using smart components to a Fontra data structure that uses the variable components. So very briefly, I kind of have to assume that you know what a variable font is, how a variable font works. Normally we have these axes that is for the whole font, like we create a light and a bold, for instance, and that works for the whole font. A variable component or variable glyph can have its own little variation space, all that is specific for the glyph. I'm going to make a part, so I will create, let's see, let's call it variable part. So I'll just make up a glyph name. We see it here as a placeholder doesn't exist yet. I will double click. Now it exists. So I will draw a shape. This will be roughly I will try to make a variable stroke that we can then place in other glyphs. So but let's first, so this is kind of a little stroke that I want to be variable. Well, on the one hand, it could respond to the weight axis. So maybe, but let's, before we go there, let me turn the sides into curves so that we can bend it. So what I will do is, so I'm going to create a local axis. We have this little tool icon here that will make lead me to a dialog called edit local axis. Currently, there are no local axes. I will add one, and I will call this one bend, and the value min, default, maximum. Okay, by default it will do 0, 0, 100, which is, I think, well, okay, let's actually do a minimum of minus 100. So we have an axis that goes both ways. Obviously, nothing is happening yet, but let's first go to the bend position here, and I'm going to add a source at that location, and I will select these handles and make it bend. So now I have an axis where this can bend. Okay, cool. But I also want it to bend the other way. So we'll have to insert another source at the other end of the axis. Let's just add the source, and let's go the other way. So now we have an axis that makes this thing bend both ways if we want. Perhaps it's a little bit redundant, but anyway, let's now also make it respond. This button here is to go back to the default position for everything. I now also want it to respond to the global weight axis, and I will insert a weight axis, a weight source right here. And what I will do is just move these guys a bit out. A bit this way, so now it should now respond to the weight axis, and these things add up. I mean, we can of course refine this, but at the moment I have sources for bend left, bend right, but since these things combine, it actually also works for my bold or black master. Now, what to do with this? So I've created a shape that has its own axis. We can create as many axes as we want, but now we will place it in another glyph. So let's, for instance, well, let's create a capital letter I. I double-clicked it, create it, and in edit mode, I will add a component. And we don't have all that many glyphs in the font yet. I will place the variable part. We'll see it here, and we do not have any sources here yet, but it already responds to the weight axis because the component that we refer to does that. But we can, in this one source, we can, no, I don't want to double click. I have to go to the info panel. And here I see the information for this component. So here we see the name, but also the transformation. We could, for instance, rotate it. There's also, we can specify the center of rotation. There's here this is the origin of the component, but if I alt click drag, then I drag the center of transformation, and if I drag it roughly to the middle here, then my rotation would actually be centered around that point. But let's do something with that bend axis, so we can make it bend a little bit. Let's also, so right now it does respond to the weight axis. Well, let's leave that in peace for now. Let's do something with the width axis. So for instance, let me add a source for width, and I can for a white, I can then, so it inserted a source for the white position. I can tweak these values, and now I would have an interpolatable thing here. But let's do, so I changed the bend value, but I can also change the, for instance, the rotation. Let's go here to some value like this, and we will then interpolate between, so the raw transformation values are interpolated. So we can literally interpolate the rotation. So I need to watch for the time and see what I need to do next. Still, okay, so yeah, so I've placed one variable component in this glyph. I can, so this is kind of, could be like a stroke. I will add the same one again. And so we can place it somewhere else. Okay, now I created a interpolation problem because I only added it to the default source. Let me undo and do it again, because we can actually add a component through all sources. If I click on the pencil here and make all sources editable, then I will add components, and then it will be added to all the sources. So now it exists in both places. But now let's fine tune it, say only for this one. So we don't want to edit the regular. We can still view maybe the other source here. So maybe we also want some rotation here, or yeah, maybe we first want to set the, again, okay, yeah, that is now something we'll have to do. Probably could have done that in both sources at the same time. But anyway, let's also play with the bend thing. And I also want this rotation to do something. So let's see what we do now. So now we have two strokes that kind of do a little dance based on the width axis, but they're all based on the same base glyph, that part that I designed earlier, and it's still both respond to the weight axis like that. I will get back to this in a second. I'm going to introduce my colleague Gaëtan Baehr from the Black Foundry now, who will take over the screen for a little demo for how to assemble a Chinese character from pre-made variable components. I will briefly stop sharing my screen. And Gaëtan, hi Gaëtan, welcome, and thank you for wanting to join. Live from Paris. I will shut up now for the time being.
I think you see my screen, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So yes, for this little demo, I will present an existing project that we are currently making, and I will make a small character, the character of cat. Not only because we will maybe hear a cat while the demo, but because it's a nice character actually. We have two components. Here we can see the two components that we called in this project template glyph. I will go in detail a bit after. But these template glyphs are basically have only one axis, the width here, and this one as well as the width. And they respond as well to the weight axis. So if I move the weight, we can go from airline to extra black. And I can use both of them to create the character of cat. So it's Mao like this. If I double click on it, I will create the character. Now I can set the width at 1000. And I can call this component and this component inside. For example, for this one, I add the component. For the demonstration, I prepared the Unicode, so I know it perfectly. It's 72AD. I take this one. So now I have this template glyph inserted with the width axis here that I can tune as I want. And responding directly to the weight axis as well. Then I can call this component. I can just copy, for example, the name of the component here, and right click, and go to the default position, and add component. So now I have both of them set in the glyph, and I just have to tune the width of each of them correctly to have a proper balance. Like this, maybe this one can be a bit larger. And now I have the character of the cat, and it's already made for all the weight. But for instance, if I go to this weight, maybe it's too large, this character, this component on the right is a bit too large. So I can add a source at this location, at the weight, and then I will just tune this component in this source. So move a little bit the width here. Now it looks better, I guess. And I can have something that is properly made in all the weight. And then this character in the project exists as well with a localization for Hong Kong and Taiwan. So for example, I will name it the same name. Fontra can guess, when we put a slash, Fontra can guess the character and convert it to the Unicode name. And then I put HT for Hong Kong and Taiwan. And I will create this character as just saw before, just copying the shape here, selecting this one, and I paste it. So my character is made here. And then for this localization, I will just decompose the template glyph on the right, like this. And I will find back the component of the template glyph separately, select this one, and move this little axis to open the gap in the middle. And then the localization of this glyph is made. And we are sure that we keep exactly the same proportion on the both character. But if I look here, I lost the compatibility here. So I will just undo what I did 2 times, go back to the template glyph, and I will select everyone for edition, for the same edition at the same time, decompose, and reopen the gap here. And it's made for all of them. But if we look at so it's working correctly for the weight, but in our components, we didn't link the component to the weight axis. We linked only the template glyph to the weight axis. So if I go in really airline, I lost the weight axis here. So once again, I will just, just undo, go back to the template glyph, and I will add source for the airline here as well. So now I have 3 sources for this character. I can redo what I did by selecting everything in the same time, decompose, add the gap, and now it's working properly for all the weight. And maybe it's a bit too big for the black, so I will just edit the black and move a little bit the gap here, up, little thinner, and boom, we have all the glyph. So to go in detail, what we call template glyph is basically just a variable component that use existing instance of the component. So first we draw 3 characters that contain this component on the left. We draw the characters that contain it as the narrower, and the characters that contain it as the larger, and 1 in the middle. So then we have 3 instances of this character, larger, bit in the middle, and the narrower. And we have it for all the weight as well. And then automatically we create this template glyph that extract this component from the 3 glyphs we pre-made and create this variable component with a single axis. But if I go to this component here, so here I have my original components that contain way much more axis, control axis. I will go to the default here. So I can add some weight. I can move the width to go really narrow. I can move the height to go really flat. Depending on some character, maybe we need to use it flatter. And then we can control, I can control every element separately, like just extend them, move them, or we can have some axes that will move this or make this connection a bit thinner. Everything can be controlled. And if we look at this component, it's made of outline directly and made of another component as well, 2 other components. So we can go 1 step deeper and we will find back another component that here is just a single stroke that can move in every situation. Up. Bigger with less curve, more curve. We can just modify the end stroke, extend the end stroke. So it's really, we can have a lot of control for this element. And then we can reuse for making component, and then we can reuse for making the template glyph. And finally, we can use the template glyph to make the actual character. So yeah, I think that's good for my demonstration. I will let just continue.
Thank you, that was great. I'll start sharing my screen again, just a sec. We'll continue. So deeply into variable components. Back to my little thing. So yeah, variable components are a very useful thing to construct certain kinds of characters. We found it very useful for like East Asian scripts where there's lots of similar shapes that are similar but not identical. So traditional components often don't cut it. But there are many other use cases for it as well. Since for East Asian scripts, this on the one hand, we use it as a design methodology that just streamlines the design process. On the other hand, it also is a way to compress the data. So we've been working on to make proposals to have this principle be embedded in the OpenType standard, so that we can have actual variable components inside a binary font. There's been some progress about that. Bedard Astrabot has worked hard to make these really solid. There's now a new phase. We had a working prototype, a working proposal that has gotten some feedbacks back, and things are being changed as we speak. So this is still a work in progress, but it's still a very exciting technology. And we have some experimental code in place. So there is the already obsolete proposal from Bedard called part of the glyph table, glyph-1 proposal, that would add variable components to the glyph table. That is going, the details of that is going to change, but the concepts will largely remain the same. And in Fontraland, we actually have an experimental compiler that can turn this into a working font. So the thing I was just making, like this funny thing, let me zoom out a little bit. So we have 3 glyphs in the font, and it responds a little bit like this, and it has a weight axis. So I have this as a DesignSpace project. Wait, let me go to the Finder. So it is this. No, I just wanted to, yeah, so this is the folder that I worked with, the DesignSpace file, the original UFO, and then I made this additional space. So we have an experimental tool called Fontra Compile, which is not a full font compiler at all. It's pretty much only an outline compiler, and it compiles outlines into this experimental glyph-1 format, which is already obsolete, will be replaced very soon by a new, by a superseding proposal. But let me see, new font.DesignSpace, and I want the outcome to be, well, it's now called new font.ttf, and with a bit of luck, I'm now, let me see, back to the Finder. I now have a binary font that will not be useful anywhere really, because it contains this variation of the glyph table format that is not supported anywhere except in Harfbuzz. Harfbuzz is the important OpenType engine, layout engine, started again by Bedard Astrabot. Harfbuzz is this majorly important component of digital typesetting. It's included in Firefox, in Chrome, in all kinds of open source projects. So anyway, so Harfbuzz contains some experimental features, including this. And then we have Font Goggles, which depends on Harfbuzz. And the latest Font Goggles also includes this Harfbuzz with experimental features. So if I just drop this font onto Font Goggles, and I have to, okay, we have an empty not dev glyph, but which glyph do I have? I had an H. Look at my bad H. Let me make it bigger. The weight, so it works. It's a binary font, right? It's a TTF. It's not a UFO or a DesignSpace or whatever. Okay, I didn't design a width axis for this, but we have the capital letter. Remember from the project, I mean, we have literally 3 glyphs, an H, an I, and an unencoded component glyph. So I can write hi. Okay, so, and there are my 2 variable components. And with a bit of luck, so we have the weight axis, indeed making that component. And we see also in the H that intermediate was compiled correctly. But in the width, we should have some fun stuff happening with those 2 strokes that I placed. So we now have a live variable font that contains live variable components. And if you know a little bit about how these things work, well, perhaps I should have made that rotation effect a bit more prominent, because that proper rotation is not really possible with regular linear interpolation unless you go through the lengths of implementing nonlinear interpolation. But this directly on the variable components just works as it is. So this is kind of a glimpse into our desired future. I think this is coming. Let's hope it's, I think among the stakeholders in the OpenType specification, there is already quite a bit of traction. My estimate that it's pretty likely that this will happen. Obviously, this is a non-backwards compatible addition to the OpenType specification. So how that will work, I think we will have a time where some newer fonts might not work in older environments, or we have to build like a fallback version that is backwards compatible. But one of the reasons that this is being made is that this allows us to encode East Asian fonts much more compactly than with pure outlines. If we decompose all these components that are variable components that are used in a large East Asian project, then to compile that with variable components will save a lot of space on disk. Yeah, that actually concludes my my demo and also the time. So I think I mentioned everything that I wanted to mention, and we can open the chat for questions. So I will, for now, stop sharing my screen. I might, if there's some more stuff to show, I will maybe share again. So are there any questions at this point? Probably best to write them in the chat. Can people write in the chat? Let everyone send messages. I think that should work. Maybe people do not have questions. Can we verify that? Whether... Ooh, I see some sad thing here. Is it not working? Let everyone send messages, in-call messages. That's sad. I bet Jeremy of Black Foundry is now looking into how to change this, because that was kind of the idea. Jeremy, are you sure that people are allowed to write questions? Oh, well, that account, no. Okay, so we see it's not possible at the moment for people who are not co-hosts. So we have a technical issue here that the whole public chat doesn't work, which kind of defeats the purpose of this live online thing. Help, do we have more settings that I can manage? Look at the recording, troubleshooting, settings. No. It worked last time, so it's possible in principle. But what did we mess up?
To find the reason, but it seems like everyone should be able to write in the chat.
But Gaëtan is, I think, checking, and because I saw some thumbs down from Gaëtan, so maybe he is checking it.
Yeah, some was not from me.
Okay. That's sad. What can we do? This is, especially since it went so smoothly last time. Yeah, it's exactly that setting I've been. In this call was being transcribed. This call is being recorded. This call is open to anyone visitors in this meeting. Very sorry, everyone. What could we do as a fallback? Oh. I mean, Okay, open queue. Okay, wait, what is happening now? So we have a raised hand. What can I now do? Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe we should make everyone.
Hi, yes. I'm
Hello,
just trying
Mariana.
to help you to troubleshoot. So everyone, if you just raise your hand, Just will be able to invite you to ask your question, and then you'll be able to either say your question or write on the chat.
Okay, that's an option. Okay, now we're getting hands, right? Right. Okay. Jeremy, are you moderating the requests?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay. Okay, Sebastian, you were first. Can you speak, or if you want?
I didn't actually want to ask
Okay.
anything. I just wanted to have the possibility to maybe pose a question, but not yet. Thank you.
Okay. I wonder if once you're a contributor, you can also write in the chat, maybe. Well, Mariana can. So yeah, once you are let into the queue, you're actually able to write. So somehow our setup was different last time. We'll try to work it out and have it better for next time. So what can we do? Let's participate. Okay, should be now.
Rafael should be able now.
Yeah, Rafael, do you want to speak a question, or?
Oh yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, I do. Fantastic.
All right.
Welcome.
I wanted to see if there's any updates on extending the Fontra features by myself, on hacking it and things like that. Because last time you spoke a little bit about making something like that. Yeah. So that's my question.
Very good. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's been only very little progress on the whole plugin and scriptability front, so that is still to come. We are working on adding a menu bar on the top of the window, which will then also include a scripts menu item, and we want to implement a specific kind of plugin that just provides a script that will initially just be a JavaScript thing. We also need to work on writing these things locally and testing them, because ideally we want plugins for Fontra to be hosted online, for instance, on a GitHub repository, and that you pretty much just link to such a repository, and Fontra will find the relevant things to run the plugin, so that pretty much that you never have to install a plugin locally on your computer. So that's the idea. But of course, as for you as a developer, you want to first develop it locally. So yeah, there's still work to be done. I hear you. I will. There were so many other things also that had priority over the last month and weeks, that somehow this got brushed under the lower on the stack of things to do. I'll keep it in mind. Thanks. Very well. Let's see. Do we have more questions or comments? Can be very broad.
Maybe I have a side note. You mentioned
Yes.
file size saving on the glyph one table with variable components. Can you detail how much, or what we can expect?
I think our measurements was like at least 50%, and I think it can be more on that. It depends a bit on the structure of the data. Remember, we had different results based on Hangul versus on Hanzi, because kind of those scripts are tend to be produced in slightly different ways, like the hierarchy of the strokes versus glyph elements. So. But yeah, I think 50% is not a too optimistic kind of estimate of what is at least possible. So yeah, I don't know to what extent this is all that interesting for designers, but it is. Yeah, still large fonts for web fonts is still a problem, and of course there's all kinds of way of subsetting possible, and I think people are working on this like streaming variation of the OpenType format, so that a web page can just load the glyphs that it needs and then ask for more if more glyphs are needed. So that's technology necessary for these kinds of scripts as well. But yeah, that's a little bit besides the point of variable components. So yeah. Okay, I see a written question. Let me go read it. The question in the chat, are we planning to implement file saving in other font editor formats such as glyphs? Currently, we can actually read much of the glyphs format. I mean, pretty much outline data we can access, font information less so. It would, I mean, what I actually wanted to mention at the beginning, let me briefly go here, if for people joining new and want to know a bit more technical details about how Fontra works, how it's structured internally, I recommend to check out our slides PDF document from ATAPI 2023. So that's a bit more than half a year old, but the structure is still quite valid. So we have, in terms of code, we have separate backends and that implement file formats. And there's a backend that is that reads the glyphs format. It is possible to enhance that that backend for to also write it. So it's possible. It's not at this moment very high on our priority list. However, we do want to always be able to export to UFO DesignSpace, and since there are other tools to convert UFO DesignSpace back to glyphs, it's not directly a super crucial feature for us to implement directly. So for us, UFO DesignSpace is very important. We have an internal format called RCJK that is specialized for CJK projects. We are using that for internal projects. I mean, the implementation of that is public. It's all open source. But we're actually looking into building the Fontra native file format, which should supersede that because it's much more efficient to store. Is this the document, Mariana asks? That looks like that's the document indeed. Thank you for linking that in the chat. That's indeed the document I refer to. So that contains some description of how the project is being made. It's a hybrid application. Parts of it are written in Python and a majority is written in JavaScript using web technologies. There's still, it's done in a fairly modular way, and we have all kinds of visions of ways that Fontra could be deployed in different forms. At the moment, we require a server application that is currently written in Python, but it's entirely possible in the longer-term future to have a headless version of Fontra that really works in the browser only and can work with local data on someone's computer without having a server that would need to access that data too. So plenty of options and future possibilities. Anything else? Or Jeremy, do you have a suggestion? Jeremy of Black Foundry, co-founder of Black Foundry.
No, last time we had a question about creating a new project from scratch. It's not there yet, but
yeah,
you showed how to do it now, for now.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's worth a tiny little additional demo. I don't know, while we have like a couple minutes left. This was this new font. I in the meantime added this black source and a white source, but we also so let me go back to this DesignSpace file, because for instance, in Fontra itself, we currently do not have a way to edit the global axis for a font. So I'm going to hide this thing again. So this is our DesignSpace file. So it got a little bigger with the 2 additional sources. But for instance, I can add, let's make it, well, it's already format 5, but we can make an italic axis. Let's call it italic, and it will not have a minimum value. It will not have a maximum, but it will have values of 0 and 1, and the default will be 0. So this should add an axis so if I open this one again in Fontra by dropping it here, I should now in here. It still was open. I have to at the moment close it and restart it. So let's do that. It was still open. I have to close it first so it can reload. I should now see my italic axis. So, and indeed, we don't have any glyphs for italic. So if I want to draw an italic H, I will have to add an italic source for it. So let's call it italic, and let's make a really bad italic H. So, and an important part of the discrete axis thing is that things do not have to be interpolatable. So I can just freely change the topology of this particular glyph. Oh wait, I wanted to do that in the italic, of course, and not. So let me just add this point here. So it's now no longer interpolatable with the rest, but we have an italic glyph. And if we go back to, so all I did was add the axis, but in the meantime, we've actually added, Fontra has added a source for us. So Fontra can help populating. So at the moment, so what we want to have real soon, and we're hoping to have it done now, is that we can actually start the project from scratch in Fontra, configure the axis in Fontra itself with a nice UI. So at the moment, we kind of depend on the DesignSpace file being written elsewhere, either by hand or with another tool. There's nice extensions in RoboFont to build DesignSpace files. But Fontra can help populating the sources. So this italic UFO was added by Fontra itself.
Maybe it's worth mentioning Fontra copy as well when you want to start from a Glyphs file, for example, convert it to a Fontra project and then start editing it, really saving the changes, or font file. This is also an interesting feature that is not built in the Fontra Pak, but that can be helpful for designer to interact with other sources.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, indeed, so we can, I do not have, wait, or do I have it? No, but so Fontra is able to read and write DesignSpace in UFO, but it's able to read Glyphs files. I don't have I didn't prepare a Glyphs file, but it's also able to read binary TTF. So I can, this will be in read-only mode, and it's a little silly. Because I just opened a binary TTF, and it's a full preview. I mean, it doesn't do shaping or kerning, GPOS and G-sub. It doesn't do, but we can actually inspect the outlines. I mean, this is a TTF, so we see quadratic outlines. Fontra has full support for quadratic curves, so we can kind of see what's going on here. And we can even, if we want to, I mean, if we go to a certain position here, let me just copy this and let me hope that I didn't. So if I go here, create a glyph O, I can just paste this glyph right here. So paste from pretty much straight copied from a TTF file back into Fontra. So yeah, copy paste is relatively powerful. Let me highlight, there are some, we are working with web technology, which gives us some limitations regarding to what we can do with the local clipboard for the user. And therefore we have a clipboard export format option. By default, it will actually be glyph, the GLIF. So if I would copy this, go to my text editor, paste, then I will get glyph data, or I could actually go to RoboFont and create a new font and paste that shape right there. Likewise, if you want to paste something into Illustrator, SVG makes sense. Yeah, for Fontra itself, we use JSON. So and at the same time, so yeah, so these formats, both glyph and SVG, are about really just the shape we see here. But once we go into select, okay, I'm actually in the here. I think the DesignSpace here is not compatible with the other project, but yeah, so but if I copy a glyph, this glyph has 5 sources. If I copy it over, I will find, if I paste it in a text editor, there's a big chunk of JSON data that encodes the entire glyph, all the sources together, and we can paste that elsewhere. For instance, I can overwrite the L glyph completely through its entire design space. Anyway, by the way, yeah, I'm kind of misleading you guys, because I'm looking at a TTF, and like I also said, it is read-only, but Fontra doesn't really show that it's read-only. So I'm happily just editing here, but it's not being saved anywhere. And if I close this, it's just gone. So it doesn't write TTF. It doesn't do, I mean, that's actually a feature that's theoretically possible, that you could open up a binary file, tweak a glyph, and have it like insert that particular change into the binary. That is not something that we need to do very often, but that's at least theoretically possible. Yeah, I mean, we're now at the end of the time slot. Let me quickly go back to our call to see if there are more questions or more requests or questions. So far, I don't think so. So let's wrap it up. I mean, we will do another one in January. We will announce in the same channel. So if you follow us in Instagram or Typo Social, Mastodon, or the Black Foundry is on Twitter, then you will find out the new date. We will try to reuse the same meeting URL if that's possible. We'll try to fix the setting up that anyone can write in the chat next time. That was not necessary. Thank you for your attention, and keep it up. If you use it, find issues, please go to the GitHub repository and open issues or open discussions and ask questions there. Also, we have a Discord channel, which I think is linked on, it's no longer linked on here. Where is it linked? We had it. Anyway, our Discord channel is not super alive yet, but work in progress, like much about Fontra. Thanks again, and see you hopefully next time.